Hey, welcome back. Okay, so let's get right to the meat of the issue. Do pawn shops take in PS4 games? Well, that's going to depend on the pawn shop, like most things. It'd be real easy for me to say, oh yeah, all pawn shops take in PS4 games. But the fact of the matter is that what pawn shops do or don't take in is dependent completely on the individual pawn shop operator, who is also known as a pawnbroker. Well, so with that in mind, if the pawnbroker is comfortable taking in video games, such as PS4 video games, then, obviously they're going to. Not all pawn shops really like to deal with video games. And the reason is that there's already so many specialty stores out there that take in video games all the time. You have GameStop and all of these other retailers that really dig deep in the used media business. And so for some pawn shops, it's hard for them to really make a lot of money on them or make good loans on them because people just constantly default them all the time. So with that in mind, let's talk about how to find pawn shops that take in PS4 games. The first thing that you're going to want to do is really, really obvious. It's just going to google.com, and looking up all the pawn shops in your area. And the best way to do that, if you can imagine this, is simply type in pawn shops near me. See, Google is pretty well optimized at this point to find businesses near you to serve you the best results. And then when you look at the results, you can tell which pawn shops are near you and which aren't. And you're going to want to make a list of 3 or 4 different shops and go down the line and call them and say, hey, do you take in PS4 games? Most shops are going to be happy to tell you yes or no, and the reason for this is pretty simple. They don't want to waste the time of you coming in being angry with them if you bring in something that they don't typically take. So they're usually more than happy to tell you if they take them in or not before you show up. They will also tell you if they only take them with like video game systems, which is often the case. So in other words, some pawn shops will only take in PS4 games if you're also pawning a PS4 system. Makes sense, right? Other pawn shops will just take them in quantity, no big deal. The next question you want to ask them, and this is really important, is what else you should bring to the pawn shop with you. And the reason for this is there's really nothing worse than getting to the pawn shop and having all these games with you, and you got the cases and the manuals and clean them up, and then you don't have your ID or something else you need. So ask the pawn shop, hey, what do I need to make a loan or sell something? And the final question that you'd really want to ask them is if they only buy the games or if they actually make loans on them. Because if you don't want to sell your games and you just want to make loans on them, it's really important to clarify that before you actually get there. So ask them beforehand, hey, do you only buy games or do you make loans on them as well? And what I suspect that they will tell you is this: it depends on the game. And, to an extent, I can understand that, and hopefully you can as well. Obviously, they don't want to have a bunch of PS4 games from when the system was just released, right? They want some of the newer titles, if possible, because there's going to be more demand for those games than older games. So, to clarify, there's no way to tell you that every pawn shop across the country takes in PS4 games. I would say that it's a very good bet that they do. You should call them. You can find them simply by Googling pawn shops in my area. Ask them what you need to bring, and make sure you ask them if they just make loans on them or if they buy them as well. Okay? And hopefully that'll clarify for you what you need to talk about to the pawn shop when you call them when trying to figure out if your local pawn shops take in PS4 games. So, catch you later. Bye.
Hey, it's Brian. I hope that you loved what you just saw. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe so you can see more of it later. Thanks so much. Take it easy. Bye.